Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Living Beyond Limitations, the channel that inspires and motivates you to become all that God has created you to be and live a life of purpose regardless of your circumstance. My name is Daniela Ibikiri and I am your host. So today we have another amazing guest, Eloka Oduah. Eloka is an award-winning disability rights advocate, a public speaker, a content creator, and host of the Eclectic podcast. He's passionate about advancing disability inclusion, including the organization, management, social, and civic engagements of persons with disabilities. Currently, he is a member of the Youth Advisory Panel at Plan International, Nigeria, and a disability inclusion facilitator with the Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities for the Week and Work program. Eloka lost his sight over 2 decades ago at the age of 5, but that didn't stop him from pursuing his academic goals. He holds a master's degree in peace studies and conflict resolution from National Open University of Nigeria and BSc in political science and diplomacy from Veritas University. Eloka believes disability is not his limitation, but his experience. Without further ado, let's make welcome Eloka Oduah, Mr. Eloquent. Hello, Eloka, Mr. Eloquent. Welcome to Living Beyond Limitations. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Daniela. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I can't wait to dig into this conversation with you. You know, you're one person that has also inspired, motivated, and encouraged me in my journey living with visual impairment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. I really don't know what to say, like, other than I'm flattered to hear that I'm one of those who have inspired your adaptation to living as a person with visual impairment.
Yes. You're one of those persons. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and you've also changed my perception about visually impaired people. You know, I used to have this negative perception about visually impaired people. And the reason why it took me a very long time to come out and let everyone know I've been living with visual impairment for about 7 years now. So, Iloka, let me take you down memory lane to the first time I met you. It was at the School for the Blind at the computer lab. So we're having computer practicals. And I heard you in the background speaking, and I was like, oh, this person speaks very well. So I was stuck with my computer practicals, and you offered to help me. I was like, okay, fine, you can go ahead and help me. And the next thing, you use your hand to search for the keyboard. I was like, oh my God. So all this eloquence, this person is a visually impaired person. I can't believe it. Okay. Oh, that was me then, not anymore. Since I've met persons like you, Lucky, and a lot of other people. Yeah. So as anyone told you, well, you speak very well as a visually impaired person, or it's just me.
Hmm. Well, first of all, let me say visually impaired people. So you're now part of us. You no longer have thinking that, oh, you speak so well, and how come you can't see? You're not the first person I've had that experience with a number of people. And then it makes me wonder what the connection is with, the sight and speech. The impairment is in the eyes and not in the voice. So one vivid experience I remember, I think this was around when I was 10 or so. A relative was saying to my sister that the way Iloka speaks, you would not know that there's something wrong with his eyes. At that point, it didn't really register as a child, but thinking about it in retrospect, I then started wondering, what business, has my eyes got with the way I speak? There is no relationship whatsoever. So yeah, I get that a lot of times, and it just makes me laugh and, you know, wonder about the level of ignorance, I would say. So yeah, welcome to the light. You used to be one of those ignorant people, Daniela.
Okay, so a lot of these perceptions, like visually impaired people, yeah, I am going to speak to visually impaired people now. I know like persons with disability, but let me just talk about visually impaired persons. You are supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to speak a
Hmm.
certain way. You're not supposed to do
Hmm.
this and that in life. Speaking of all these negative perceptions, that people have about visual impaired people. Have you
Hmm.
ever let people's opinion about you define you or limit you?
Have I ever let that? Um, as far as I can remember, I don't think it has affected me really. What I do remember is, I think prior to graduating from the university, I used to be shy. And I really don't know if shy is the right word to use, but I know that I used to feel uncomfortable in public because I know that eyes are always on me. So
Yeah.
I never liked to draw attention. I still don't like drawing attention to myself now, but for a different reason. But at that time, I didn't like the attention of, people looking at me when I'm walking with someone, and hearing all the stories of, hey, yeah, don't worry, God will do it, and stuff like that. So I didn't like hearing all of those. But now I really don't mind. When people tell me, hey, yeah, sorry, I just laugh and say thank you graciously. If they knew better, they wouldn't be saying, hey, yeah, sorry. With experience, with growth, self-development, maturity, and every other thing I have had to contend with, I now know better not to let those bother me. Um, I remember uh, prior to me finding this confidence, I couldn't walk out on the streets on my own. Now, I confidently walk on the streets with my cane guide. In fact, I'm even the one who calls for help when I need help. I'm like, hey, excuse me, I need help. Good morning. And those who would respond. I even had one experience one certain time. I was trying to hail a cab and I kept raising my hand. And since I can't see which one was empty and which one had passengers in them, so whenever I heard a sound passing, a sound of a car passing, I'd raised my hand. And I stood there for almost an hour. This was when I was serving. I was to go to my PPA and time had gone. And interestingly, this was in the estate, and this was prior to me having um, a smartphone and knowing how to use the online apps now to request for rides. So in the estate there at the gates, I was, trying to hail cabs and I wasn't getting. And so I'm like, okay, I think I need to ask for help now. So the first person I noticed coming when I had made that decision, I think the person was just walking into the estate. And I said, hello, excuse me, please. And then he goes, oh, sorry, I don't have anything on me now. And I said, oh, no, I'm not asking for money. I need help stopping a cab. And then and then he now became more receptive. And then he goes, oh, okay, sorry. And he goes, okay, I'm a worker here. I'm a laborer, so I'm working in the estate. Let me help you, and that was when he was able to help me stop a car. But you see, these are different experiences, right? Prior to, like I said, my university days, that experience alone would have broken me. Hearing
Mm.
somebody say, have anything, you don't even know why I'm stopping you, right? You're already telling me that I don't have anything on me now you know. But, since graduating from school, experiencing life and the world as the way it is, I've been able to develop this thick skin and then just laugh about experiences like that. So, yeah.
Speaking of what you said something that you were shy, like because you don't want to go out. People would always say, hey, yeah, God will do it.
Mm-hmm.
God will do it. That's what a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people say. God will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that you can live your life as a visual impaired person? That it is not God's will for you to live as a visually impaired person. It's not his
Mm-hmm.
purpose, it's not his plan for you. The Bible
Hmm.
says God's plans for you are plans of good and not evil. So if
Hmm.
that is the case, and people say, oh, sorry, God will do it, that means they
Hmm.
see it as an evil thing, and God has to do the
Hmm.
plan that is a good one for Him to restore
Hmm.
your sight. So, what would you like to say about that?
It's perfectly true that God's plans for us are of good and not of evil to bring us to an expected end. But then again, what is that expected end that God has for you? You are not the one making the plans. You
Hmm.
are not the one who is defining what that expected end is for you. And truth be told, um, God actually really does not have evil plans for us. But I think the way people interpret these things, for me, I always like to create a balance to things, right? And the way we may interpret scriptures may be wrong. I don't know. I myself, my interpretation may be wrong, but this is how I interpret these things, right? Now, um, I think this is about 6 years ago or 7 years ago. Um, it just dawned on me really that a number of great individuals in the Bible had disabilities, and they did wonders in the name of God. In fact, some even had impairments and were healing others, right?
Yeah.
So the question, yeah, so the question I would then ask now was, what was God thinking? What was
Hmm.
his expected end for these people he was using to do wonderful things? Was his plan for them evil and not good? Was the expected end what exactly really? What exactly was that expected end? Was it to show the world that no matter who you are, no matter the kind of your impairment, I can still use you to achieve greatness? I'll give you an example with, you know, one individual that had an impairment, and that's Moses. So at the burning bush, when God meets Moses and he's talking to Moses and he's asking Moses to go to Pharaoh and deliver the children of Israel from Pharaoh or from the land of Egypt. Moses tells God that I am slow of speech. Send someone else. That's an impairment,
Yeah.
speech impairment. People who stutter, speech impairment is a type of impairment. People with speech impairments are classified as persons with disabilities. Now, God has Moses in front of him, admitting that, hey, God, in case you don't know, I have an impairment. I can't speak fluently. Send somebody else. And God responds and says, who made you? Who made the seeing, the deaf, or the blind? Is it
Hmm.
not I? Now, this is God, the same God whose thoughts for us are good and not of evil, to bring us to an expected end, is admitting that I made the deaf, the seeing, and the blind. What was his purpose? Did he create blind people to bring them to a different expected end? Did he create deaf people to bring them to a different expected end? I don't know, right? But what I do know is that God had the power to heal Moses at that spot and say, oh, is it just your speech problem? Small matter. Open your mouth. And then he touches him. And then Moses is able to speak fluently. But God chose not to. He didn't. Instead, he reprimanded Moses, the same God that parted the Red Sea, using Moses to do that, the same God that, brought so much plague on the land of Egypt, using Moses to do that, right? God saw Aaron before he came to meet Moses, but he chose to use Moses and tells Moses that I would make you a God over Aaron, and Aaron would be your mouthpiece.
Hmm.
So this is another you know, thing that people would want to ask themselves, and if they can find answers to it, then I think it will answer the questions of, expected end and God's purpose, right? So
Hmm.
whatever God's purpose for us are, whatever that expected end is, we actually really don't know. All we can
Yeah.
do is to just believe that God has a plan for us. We may not be happy with that plan. I'll give you another example about not being happy with God's plan and choosing to fight it. And that example would be Jonah did not like the plan of God for him. Why would you send me to Nineveh? Those people deserve to die. I would not go to Nineveh, right? And then God says, you must go to Nineveh, causes the fish to swallow him and vomits him when Jonah finally realizes that, hey, God's plans for me are good and not of evil to bring me to an expected end. What was his expected end at that time? Was to go to Nineveh. He
Nineveh.
didn't like God's plan, right? But he had to eventually key into it, and things turned out well for him in the end. So we just have to trust in God's plans, whether we like it or not, whether we come with an impairment or not. When Jesus was healing the blind man and he was asked by his disciples whose sins had made this, caused the blindness, and Jesus said it was nobody's fault. It was done so that the name of God may be glorified. So what if God's expected plan for you as a person with impairment is that he uses you as he used Moses to achieve great things in spite of
Hmm.
your impairment? What if his expected plan for you was that you have this impairment and somewhere along the line, he restores you to what you were before the impairment came, so that people can actually still remember that he is God and he still performs miracles? Or what if his expected plan for you is that you should not just, you know, receive any healing with regards to the impairment, but the things you're able to achieve as a person with impairment is far greater than what you would have achieved as a person without impairment,
Hmm.
right? So I think we should slow down on some of these things that, we get to to hammer on when we are interpreting scriptures and making persons with disabilities feel like they do not have faith enough or they don't trust in the same God that others trust in. There are so many different things, and interpretation to these things. We don't know what God's purpose for us is. We don't know what his plans are. Just be yourself, be kind, be good, and key into God's plans as much as you understand it and as much as you can.
Yeah, very true. Well said. You know, the
Mm.
Bible says all things work together for your good. So whether
Mhm,
along the line you become someone living with an impairment is still for
mhm,
God's good. It's still working together for your good. And the Bible also says, many are the plans of man, but God purpose stands. We all have our
mhm,
plans. Yes, but God purpose stands. God's plans, his thoughts, his ways are different from ours. You never know. Like the first video I made this season, I mentioned someone Nick Vujicic, a guy born without
mhm,
arms and legs. Yeah, he's all over the world impacting lives. He's living his best life. He's
mhm,
fulfilling God's purpose for him. So, because you're a person with impairment, doesn't mean God cannot use you to fulfill his purpose. It's still part of his plans for you. I have come to
mm,
realize that. I believe I've come to discover my purpose in this season of my life with impairment, though. Meanwhile,
mm.
without the impairment, I was just there, floating and all. So you never know God's plan for you. Yeah, well
You
said.
were living the baby girl life.
Oh, Shay, that kind of thing.
But
La
that doesn't mean you're
diva.
not still living it now.
Oh
But
yes,
you're
I'm
living it
living
with
it,
a
but
purpose.
I
Yes,
was
you're living it with a
with a
purpose to your
purpose.
life
Yes,
now.
I was
Yeah,
just living
yeah.
without aim direction, but now
Mm.
the baby girl life with direction, with purpose.
Like a motivational speaker.
Hmm. Okay, Eloka. So let's aside over 2 decades at the age of 5.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
can you just tell us how you became a visually impaired person?
Yeah. Okay, so a very brief account of that story would be that, I was in school um, back then in Jos. I was in pre-primary, and then I had come back from school that day with a headache and a very severe headache, really. And then I had, complained to my parents, and I was giving some painkiller. And hey, yeah, I would be the first to hold my hand up and admit that I was a very stubborn and rough child. So
Mhm.
my parents would have assumed that I had one of those hectic days in school. I probably fought in school, which, had caused so much stress, and I was asked to rest. And unfortunately, the pain did not let up. I still experienced that excruciating pain all through the night. So the following morning, I had to be, rushed to the hospital. I was treated for malaria. The headache persisted. In fact, this headache persisted for a full month, without
Wow.
a moment's pause. Yes. And then during that time, a number of things happened. My neck has started to tilt to was it to the left or the right now? I can't remember, but I think it was the left. And my left eye was bulging out as well,
Hmm.
and so immediately I had to be treated for suspected meningitis, because no test was, conducted to determine if there was actually meningitis or not. The case was that critical. So they did what they call lumbar puncture. Um, I actually don't remember that lumbar puncture experience, but for those who know what it is, I
I
can only
know.
retell this particular I can only retell this particular experience from the stories I've heard my dad say. He said that about six people had to hold me down, but I think it had to do with injecting me in the back or something. Like
Yes, your
mentioning it now,
spinal
I'm
cord.
actually feeling uncomfortable. So interestingly, actually, was that should I say interestingly or miraculously, whatever it was,
Mm.
as sudden as the headache came, uh, after a month, it went just on its own. And all the bulging eye had gone back to normal. The bent neck had straightened out. The headache had gone. So, but then I had then lost my sight. We then had to start going to different hospitals trying to find, the cause for this. It was then I was diagnosed with optic nerve atrophy, has no cure, and there are impairments like that. Those are that can be treated. Those are reversible impairments, and those that have no cure are irreversible impairment. So you then have to adjust to living, as a person with a disability and find ways to adapt. So yeah, that's a summary of the story of the loss of my sight, really.
Oh, wow. Wow. At
Hmm.
the tender age of 5. Okay, so me, it's quite
Yeah.
similar. I also had a migraine. I lost my sight, but mine didn't last for long. The migraine, it was maybe like few hours or something, and bam, I had blurry vision. And the names too. Then I was diagnosed with optic neuritis, kind of sound like yours. And I also had that lumbar puncture. Yes,
Hmm.
taking fluid from the spinal cord. Oh, been through a
How
lot.
how painful was it? Because I can't remember it really.
Oh, yes, I
Did
think
you
they
have
gave
six
me.
men hold you down too?
No, not really. They gave me an injection. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, to numb, yeah, the pains and all that. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Well, things we go through.
Yeah.
So at that
Hmm.
tender age of 5, did you understand what blindness was at that age? You were so little. And you hold a
Hmm.
master's degree. Like you didn't even stop at BSc, you went further to have your master's. It didn't stop you from pursuing your academic goals. So I'd like you to share your experience going through school up to the point of master's.
Honestly, I would say that it's until quite recently that I fully appreciate what it means to be visually impaired. Growing up, it didn't register at all. As a
Hmm.
child, I'm sure this will be the case with so many visually impaired children growing up. But my own case, um, because I can remember the time that I could see and when I lost my sight, when I think about it in hindsight. And I didn't see any difference at that time with my, you know, child mentality. I still thought I could run around as I used to. And I still did run around and run
Hmm.
into half open doors. try to run up the stairs and miss a step and then fall. And it still didn't register that, hey, there's something wrong with you now. So, do things differently. In spite of all of those things, I would run into the wall, run into things, and it still didn't stop me from being a stubborn child. I still fought as much as I would fight when I was sighted. As a matter of fact, I remember one fighting experience I had that I wanted to punch somebody and I missed my punch and, punched an object instead. It was very painful. It still didn't stop me from trying to hit the person. So it didn't really register, even going to school and then not learning the way others had to learn. It still didn't register really. It still didn't register. Then I had my primary education. I then had to learn Braille. I was in a school. It was an inclusive school. It had children with various types of impairments there, alongside children without impairment. I was one of the first students who opened the school. Then after that, went on for my secondary education, having to get fellow students now who were cited to dictate notes to us, or to me. Let me speak specifically for myself. To dictate notes to me, I'd record those notes, then braille them later. If a teacher was dictating the notes in class, I would braille as others were taking notes as well. And then read. Then I use the manual typewriter to write my examinations and continuous assessment so that teachers would be able to read what I had written. Then when I got to the university, you know, and then I would say I was still in my shell really, because that it was when I was in secondary school, I began to become more aware of the fact that I drew a lot of attention owing to the fact that I can't see, and people would naturally wonder, this person that cannot see, how does he know where he's going? How does he do the things he does? You know. So in the university, I graduated from using Braille and typewriter to using, a laptop. Yes, then after my first degree, um I graduated in 2018, then I went in for my master's 2 years later, that's in 2020, and then I was done with that by 2022. My certificate was issued last year. So yeah, in 2022 I was done with my master's. So and I used my laptop as well. So yeah, it wasn't easy. It's not as easy as I am, you know,
Oh yeah, you make it
retelling
sound very
the
easy.
story
Like,
now.
oh God, going to
So
school as a
I should I
visually
should I should
impaired person, it's something every other person can do.
Mhm. I should point that out. It's not easy. It takes a lot of personal willpower, determination, self-motivation to do that because you would get lots of discouragement. So all those times I talked about having students dictate notes for me to record, it wasn't every time I said to someone, come help me read these notes that, someone was available. There are times where I would have to schedule, there are times I'd have to chase students around. It wasn't easy, really. And all of this could have been discouraging, and then going to the university as well. I was the only visually impaired student in the school. So that in itself was challenging, also having to adapt, getting lecturers to be used to me in the classroom, and all of those things. So no, it wasn't easy really.
Wow.
Mm.
Hmm. Willingness,
Mm.
self-motivation, and all that. It takes all that to still pull through.
Yes.
Because I used
Yes.
to wonder, mine happened at a very later stage of my life. I didn't go to school as a
Mm.
visually impaired person. I used to tell myself, you go
Mm.
fit so like, oh wow. So when I see people say you go to school and you up to the point of masters, wow, well done. I must
Mm.
commend your determination and
Thank
willingness.
you.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. You
You're
can commend me
welcome.
again because it's truly not
No, I
easy.
must
So thank you.
commend your willingness and your determination. Okay, so you're also a content creator and a public speaker.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
You're the host of the Eclectic podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, before we talk about what you do on your podcast, I'd like to talk about a TED speech you gave. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, some time
Mm-hmm.
back. And that's your mantra, like disability, not my limitation, but my experience. Hmm. I'd like you to
Yeah.
enlighten us about that.
Disability actually is my experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be my limitation. It only becomes a limitation if society does not take away those barriers that prevents me from participating. And I have mentioned some of those barriers. When all of these things are in place, then there's a huge, barrier that then limits me as a person with disability. But then is it really my disability that has limited me, or these barriers? Really, it's all about lived experiences for me and not necessarily a limitation.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. So, disability is not a
Mm.
limitation. Okay. So, your podcast, The Eclectic,
Mm-hmm.
what is it all
Mm-hmm.
about?
Okay, so the Eclectic is a podcast where we discuss everyday issues. It actually started as me talking about a variety of issues bordering on different aspects of life and its intricacies. And then at some point, I decided to be more specific about including the conversation of disabilities. So I get, to have these conversations, regardless of what the conversation is about. I always find a way to ensure that, an element of disability inclusion is discussed on that podcast. So basically, what we majorly do now is to get people who are doing things. So I say we celebrate ordinary people who are achieving extraordinary things. We also have persons with disabilities come share their experiences, what exactly it is they are doing, how they are doing it, the challenges and success stories. And so we find ways, this in this manner to be able to ensure that the conversation about disability is constantly in the ears of people, because it is only through understanding can there be any form of acceptance. And when people begin to understand, disability the way it is, they can then accept it, and then the level of discrimination will drop, the level of awareness about disability issues will be increased, and then there will be that breach between discrimination and awareness.
Oh, yeah. Making people to be aware of persons with disabilities. Part of what I'm doing here. So they would know, like, oh, all those perceptions they have, it's not true. There are a lot of people, achieving success and all that in their various endeavors, regardless of their disabilities. And guys, I've featured on that podcast as well. It's the Eclectic, and you can listen to it on Spotify. So, Eloka, it's been a wonderful time with you. My friend, yes, let me let everyone know that you are my friend, the one that always encourages me, advises me, as a Methuselah in implement business. I'm a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
newbie. I'm a
Yeah,
newbie, so I
yeah,
need
yeah.
like a
You should
godfather
you
kind
should
of
respect
thing.
me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And thank you so much for all you do. As we come to an end, what are your final words for the viewers?
Well, my final words really would be more of what I always say. Disability really is an experience. It does not necessarily have to be a limitation. It's no doubt that there are actually certain things you cannot do as a result of your impairment, but that doesn't mean the things you can do, you shouldn't do them because you have an impairment. Take away those barriers that prevent you from doing the things that you actually can do, and then run with it. Don't just let the barriers keep you down. Keep struggling, keep fighting. That's really what life is all about. So that's for persons with disabilities. Now, for persons without disability, You need to realize that we are human beings, first of all. We are just as humans as you are. So the only difference is that we get to do things differently from the way you do things. That doesn't make us any less human beings. We have feelings just as you do. So I think that um, you should learn to be more accommodating and learn to be inclusive in everything that you do because, hey, disability is no respecter of persons. You can see from Daniela's story and mine that we were not born with this impairment. It happened to us. And now, hey, we are living our reality. So we should learn to um, be right in our attitude. We should learn how to relate with persons with disabilities. In the end, for everybody, let love live. Be kind, and be kind.
Yeah, be kind, and be kind. Be accommodative, include persons with disabilities. Have the right attitude. Like Eloka said, it can happen to anyone. Yeah, you never know. So just be kind. Eloka, I love your mantra, your slogan. Disability, not my limitation, but my experience. Should be told, it is just an experience, and we all have our different experiences. Thank you, Eloka, for that wonderful conversation. Thanks for joining me here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the viewers.